Hi, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Clangin and Bangin with Mikey, episode 228. And today we're going to talk about how important grace is, man. A lot of us don't get the grace that we need for X amount of reasons, right? Whether people that we dealing with, don't give us the grace, don't know how to give us the grace, or whatever it is. Me, on the other hand, I'll give people grace simply just because of what they're going through. But I will not sit there and rehash the same subject over and over and over again because, like me and my circle says, if you stay in a situation long enough and there's no improvement, you become part of the problem. I'm gonna say it again. If you stay in a situation long enough and there's no improvement, you become part of the problem. There's only so much you can do before you're like, you know what, this doesn't serve me. And there's only so much you can do until you realize that like your effort is futile, right? And I'm not saying be mean, be disrespectful, and like this be an asshole. Like don't do that. But what you want to do, if you see the situation isn't improving, just leave it alone. Understand that it's okay. Understand that it's like this person, whatever they're going through, whether it's your wife, your girlfriend, fiance, best friend, friend in general, because everybody goes through something, right? Um, Now that's different. That's a difference between you sitting there and you venting, right? I can sit on the phone. Like I've done it. I've sat on the phone for 3 hours with somebody and we just talked. And they talk, they talk, they talk, they talk, they talk, and I didn't say much, because in the very beginning of the conversation, I asked this individual, I was like, "Hey sis, like, do you want solutions or you just want to vent?" And she's like, "I just want to vent." I'm like, "Okay, cool. We can we can do that." And I didn't know I was on the phone for like 3 hours. You know, it was a regular Friday night. I'm sitting there working on this. I'm working on something. Or I'm working on some sort of music. And I get a call. And the next thing I know, it's like 8 something. And the next time I know, I get off the phone and it's like 11 something at night. And like my thing is like a lot of people just want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to just they just want to have that, right? Um, and it's true. A lot of people don't know how it is to be seen, to be heard, or respected, and that's something that I strive for because it's like growing up, I was never that kid who was seen, heard, or respected, right? And It's just something that unless you've been through it, you have no idea what it feels like, man. You have no idea what it feels like to be dismissed. You have no idea what it feels like to be ridiculed. You have no idea what it feels like to have nobody believe in you, right? Um, and I don't hold grudges against people, but I never forget how you made me feel. You know, I'll never forget. You know, when you had the ability or the opportunity, I should say, to be a safe space, to be somebody that I could come to, you weren't that. So all in all in all, it's like sometimes you just have to look at the situation and be like, you know what, this this doesn't serve me. Let me walk away from this before something happens where you can't take it back, whether it's verbally, physically, whatever it is, because what I do for work, all it takes is one time, one bad decision, one poor decision, and your whole life can get fucked up. And a lot of the times, man, it's like people just aren't ready for what you have to offer them. It's not that they don't want it. It's not that they don't, need it in some capacity. Um, because people do, man. And see, the difference between me is, I tell people this all the time. In the beginning, you're gonna love me, you know. But at the end, whatever that end is, not that you're gonna hate me, but but you won't be able to, won't be able to stand me because I'm honest, transparent. I'm not gonna sit there and like play victim in a situation. I'm not gonna sit there and do X, Y, and Z. You talk to some of my best friends, they be like, I've known Mike for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's like he's always been the same dude. Like he may talk a lot of shit, but in the grand scheme of things, he is gonna be honest with you to a fault. He's gonna hold you accountable. And that may piss you off because I think a lot of people, they're so used to not being held accountable and not having somebody else check them. I mean, because I'm not an asshole. Like, I'm just honest, and I tell people all the time, it's like, after a certain period of time in any situation, you have to look at it and like, you have to ask yourself, why are you still here? Like, why are you still in a situation where there's no improvement? I recently had somebody that I know, a good friend of mine. We was talking, and they said X, Y, and Z, like, this is what they're gonna do, and I'm like, okay, but you have all this, you have all this previous experience with this individual. What does an extra time frame on this already do? Like, it already, what do you call that? It's already showing that your situation that you're in is not working, And I was like, all you doing is wasting your time. I told this individual, you're wasting your time, and you're just and you're looking for excuses to stay in a situation where where your needs ain't being met, right? And when I say that, I don't mean just physically, but emotionally too. It's like this person will complain and do all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, why don't you just break up with this individual? Break up with them, or break up with this person because you deserve better. And I've been in several, I've had people come to me and tell me, most of it's relationship based, right? And then people tell me like, yo, you should be a therapist. Like, nah, these motherfuckers ain't ready for me. I would have to go back to school and get my master's for that. I ain't trying to do all that. And it's like, I remember this one girl was telling me like, yeah, you know what, my boyfriend's just, he's love bombing me, this and this, and I'm like, okay, if you know that he's love bombing you, take note of that, and take note of how long that shit lasts. And just because you're getting the Sonic coins knocked out of you doesn't mean that everything else is gonna magically, get better. I was also told by another person that like, oh, well, it doesn't have to get better, but it has to get fixed. I'm like, you realize how stupid you sound? And they're like, what? Like, yeah. Like, what do you mean it doesn't have to get better, but it has to get fixed? If it's not getting better, then how's it getting fixed? Yeah. So it's like a lot of the times people will tell you indirectly what's going on, and it's like, okay, but if you know what's going on, why are you still there? And I was talking to another buddy of mine who's going through, his situation with his divorce, and he was telling me, like, yeah, man, it's like, I never I never understood why dudes would fight for their girls and divorce and everything like that too, and all this other shit. And now that he's in it, he's like, yo, I get it. You know, he's like, I understand it because it's like you're losing a part of you. I was like, yeah, dog. It was like, anytime you anytime you lose somebody who you thought you was gonna spend the rest of your life with, whether it's, you know, a girlfriend that you proposed to, a fiance, you know, or a wife or a husband, it's like anytime you lose your quote unquote your rock, you know, the person that you go to for, you know, for comfort, for counseling, you know, for advice, anything, right? Anytime you lose that, you feel lost for a minute, man, and it's like, and it's a really shitty thing because like you end up just thinking that everybody else is like that, you know, and nobody else, nobody is. It's literally just them, and there's really nothing that you can say to make the blow less, you know, less hurtful, because you can't. Like, what are you gonna do? Would you say X, Y, and Z for what? You know, it just doesn't matter. And me and my buddy, and mind you, again, another college friend, go back fucking like 10, 15, almost 20 years. Yeah. Or close to 20 years. And so she was saying, you know, he was saying all this shit, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, bro, you know. And he told me something that I've never heard anybody else who's going through a divorce say from a man. Usually men are bitter, they're angry, they're X, Y, and Z, and like they don't know why they're getting divorced. But in reality, we all know why you're getting divorced, dog. You an asshole. My man said, he's like, yo, even though me and my wife are splitting up, my main objective is to make sure my kids are okay. My main objective is to make sure that my kids want for nothing. My main objective is to make sure my kids are financially set up for a better future than I have. And I sat in my truck and I thought about it. Because I'm like, yo, like, this is a motherfucker that knows. Like, he understands that it's bigger than just him and his feelings. He understands that everything that he's going through, it's bigger than him. It impacts more people than just him. And that's why, like, I wanted to come on here and like make this episode strictly about grace, man, because it's like, I don't hate anybody, you know, I don't despise anybody. I just choose not to deal with certain individuals. And if they feel a certain way about it, then that's fine, man. Like, I can't sit here and stop my life simply because you feel a certain way. I can't sit here and stop what's going on because you and your feelings. And a lot of it has to do with people not wanting to recognize what's already been written on the wall. I'm gonna say it again. They're not willing to recognize what's already been written on the wall. Meaning they wrote it. They just don't want to look at it. And when you keep ignoring your problems and you keep doing X, Y, and Z, you can't sit there and play victim. You can't sit there and do X, Y, and Z because you're also enabling it too. You know. What's really interesting to me is like when they're in the midst of divorce, whether it's the husband, the wife, whatever it is, usually one person always says, "Well, I just want them to be, to be there for our kids, this and this and that." And I'm like, you're asking somebody who never was there to begin with to be somebody, to be something that they, that they're most likely incapable of doing, you know. And when you're incapable of doing that, then how are you going to be there for somebody when you can't even be there for yourself, or they can't even be there for you, you know, when you're the main character in their story, you know. And to me, that's the most heartbreaking thing, is like, and it's mostly women who say this shit. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. You know, you ignored the red flags. You ignored everything else going on, and all this other bad shit. And then now that shit's out in the open, and you want to be a certain way about it, and you can't because it falls back on you. You know, you're the one, you know, who, instead of trying to deal with the issues, instead of trying to deal with the problems, you just kind of hoping and pray that shit would get better. And it didn't. And like I said, I give people grace, because of the situations that they're in. But what I don't like, and what I see quite a bit, is people will get online, they'll bash the other half, and they'll do X, Y, and Z. And majority of people are laughing at you. Like, they're laughing at you because, yo, you knew what was going on. You knew what the vibe was. And yet you still stayed. Yet you still had kids with this individual. Yet you still married him. You know what I mean? Yet you did all this other shit. And you had all these red flags sprinkled along your way. Just because you had a few green flags in your hand, you failed to realize that you were standing in a field of red flags. Now, there's a difference in if the person is making a change to get better, to turn those red flags into green flags. They're doing the work, right? There's a difference in that. And I applaud people for doing the work because it's hard. I know me, per se, myself personally, it's hard. It's hard to sit, to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, yo, okay, your situation got fucked up because of X, Y, and Z. And bro, majority of it is your fault, And, well, a lot of people might sit there and point the fingers like, no, it's like, it takes two people not to make something work. And it takes two people to make something work. And it's like, I think what people do, which is wrong, to a point, is where they isolate themselves because they because they have to work on themselves for a long period of time. And what I mean is that, like, yeah, we all have flaws, we all have shortcomings, but it's like, you don't isolate yourself, for a long period of time to get better. That's not how it works. You have to get back out there, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and you have to see your flaws for what they are. And a lot of it has to do with people not want to take responsibility or accountability for what they do and what they say. I, for once, I've been told a lot of shit. And it hurts because I don't treat people like they're options. But at the same time, when you treat me like an option, and I can kind of feel the energy, switch too. It's usually a subtle thing, and when the energy switches, I literally tell myself, okay, bro, this is about to switch. How are you gonna move? How are you gonna do X, Y, and Z? And that's usually when I fall back. Because, like I said in my record, You know, you know, yeah, like I said in the record, it's like before I crash out, I remove myself. Yeah, because why why put yourself in a situation where you're letting your emotions go overboard? That's what ego stands for. Emotions going overboard. And it and if you can't control your emotions in a situation, you can't control yourself. So instead of you sitting there and wondering what's going on, why is it, why is this individual acting this way, doing X, Y, and Z, just remove yourself from it. Remove yourself from the situation and just focus on yourself. Start pouring back into you, and start realizing that you're important too, you know. Stop treating yourself as an option because you're a priority too. And even me, sometimes I gotta remind myself, like, nigga, you the main character in your story. Wait, what the fuck's your main character energy, motherfucker? Yeah, because it's true. You don't get as far as I've gotten in anything that I've done without some serious self belief and some serious fuck you to everybody else who didn't believe in you. So it's important that people understand that, and it's important that people come to the realization that everything that you want is outside your comfort zone. If you don't try, you never know. And I think that's extremely important, man. It's like actually giving a shit about what you want to go after. I don't care what it is. Whether it's your bachelor's, your master's, your PhD, whether it's a bodybuilding show, whether it's a local bodybuilding show, or nationals, whatever it is. Whatever it is. Go after it with everything you got. Because you don't want to watch life pass you by. Because we're not here for a long time, man. And I think if more people understood that, they would be more proactive in that. And that's just where I'm at, man. So to wrap this up, grace is important. Give people grace. Understand that their situations are complex, in their own mind. Ask them 2 simple things before the conversation begins, which I always do. And be like, well, do you want to vent or do you want solutions? Because if you want to vent, we can go get your favorite shit right now, like your favorite food, your favorite snack, whatever. We can just sit there and chill. But if you want solutions, be ready to get your not to get your feelings hurt, but be ready to understand that solutions come with accountability. I'm gonna say it again. Solutions come with accountability. Because you can't offer solutions, or you can't ask for, well, like, what are your solutions to this, without holding you accountable too. All right, y'all. This is about 24 minutes of your life that y'all won't get back. Hope y'all keeping the 4 Ps. Private player, positive pushing. I'll see y'all next week Sunday. I love y'all, and like I always say, know your worth because you're better than what you are. Peace. All right, y'all. Have a good Sunday. Stay safe. Happy Memorial Day to everybody else out there too.